Addventures is a multidisciplinary brand, culture, and marketing firm with offices in Providence, Rhode Island, Miami, and New York. Alex is an Emmy Award winner. He produces and manages a diverse mix of events, marketing campaigns for a wide range of clients, from hospitality and tourism to nonprofit groups, government organizations, and Fortune 500 companies. Alex, how have the last few weeks been for you?
It has, like everyone, it's been filled with lots of change, but kind of in our marketing space, it really has been about pivoting and adapting for our clients and kind of responding to their needs. So there's definitely been, I think with a lot of us, there's lots of changes in business, loss of business, but then also how people are pivoting. Some of that's actually kind of growing as well. So it's been a bit overwhelming over the past few weeks, but we're pivoting is kind of really the key word. I think is definitely something that we'll talk about today as well, but that definitely has been my hectic life over the past weeks of how do we adapt and pivot in everything we're doing.
Awesome. Well, not awesome, but thanks, Alex. Longtime ILEA friend, Kelly Treadway. Kelly is the only one without a virtual background, believe it or not, that is actually painted or wallpapered onto that wall. Kelly has 23 years of experience in the events industry and is the owner and lead strategist for Event Curious. Many of you probably know this brand from online. They're an award-winning digital marketing agency. Event Curious provides social media management, content creation, and website design for event and hospitality companies across North America. Cheeky and creative, I can vouch for both of those. Event Curious works with companies to tell their story in engaging ways. Event Curious has their finger on the pulse of the live events industry. Kelly, what's going on in your world?
Oh goodness, it's been a whirlwind for sure. We got to see, I would say the week before TSE, we got to start seeing what was happening with the pandemic with our West Coast clients. We started seeing it then. So we got it a week before I think real panic set in, because we didn't really start seeing that until the very tail end of TSE that week. So we've been busy, like Alex said, we've been busy with 20 plus clients across the US, either helping them pivot or helping them stay relevant and remembered. Unless they're pivoting, there hasn't been much selling going on. So it really is having to be creative on projects and how you're being seen and perceived out there. But it's been chaotic and long days and rewarding, and lots of conversations with company owners, lots of emotional conversations with company owners that you never thought that you would have. But in that, there have been heartwarming moments, and there's also been some really tough decisions being made. So we have a really good fisheye across the U.S. because we work with so many different disciplines in the events industry. So we've really gotten to see some interesting things about how companies are pivoting. Companies that are less than 10 years old, and one of our companies is a century-year-old. So it's really been interesting to see how that is all shuffling out, and we're only 3 weeks in. So,
wow, thank you for that.
All right.
Let's do it.
Thank you all for being here. Looking forward to this conversation. So, like we said, this is intended to be a conversation amongst the three of you for sure, and Dustin and myself as well. And so Dustin, just to be totally transparent, I can't see the Q&A box since I'm running this one technically with a 6 out of 10 rating. If you could just keep your eyes on the Q&A box as we talked about.
Yeah, no problem.
Let's stay connected here. So let's just wet the palate a little bit and come out of the gates with a conversation about what's going on right now. So, the last couple of weeks, if I might be wrong, but we were in the eye of the storm, and we're by no means coming out of it yet from a health standpoint, but perhaps from knowing or deciding what brands will do from a pivoting standpoint. Maybe the storm, we're moving through to a different phase of the storm. I could be wrong, but maybe Chris, could you give us just a bit of a 50,000 or 10,000 foot view on what any size of brands, companies are doing in the midst of all things COVID-19 from a brand perspective?
Sure. And we just wrapped up yesterday. We did 4 10-person roundtables. So I'm speaking today really with sort of the input of 40 brand leaders of different size businesses trying to address some of the topics that we'll talk about in this webinar. But I think I two key thoughts. One is I personally subscribe to this idea that a crisis becomes a downturn, becomes a recession, and then becomes a depression if we're going in a linear, devolved state of economic status. And our hope, while we're clearly in a crisis, is to decide how protracted is the downturn, and will the downturn actually revert into a recession. By most definitions, a recession would be a quarter of negative economic growth. And right now, we're dealing with 4 to 6 weeks of negative growth. And so I think we're all assuming it's going to get worse before it gets better, but it hasn't officially been declared this. And even in 1 week, we had the worst week on Wall Street, and then we had the single best day on Wall Street. So the volatility is still nauseating, and I would encourage us to think about, in my mind, we're not through the eye of the storm yet. We're still in crisis mode. And the metaphor I use is when the earth is shaking, our job is to get to safety, to crawl under our desk or to get in a doorway and wait for the earthquake. Yeah. I think we've experienced an 8.0 or a 9.0 earthquake, but the aftershocks are almost more disheartening because it's every other day new news. And while the toll on human life, I think in some cases has been deemed good news. We've gone from maybe 2 million deaths in North America to maybe closer to 200,000 deaths. In comparison, that's a 90% improvement over worst case scenario. From the economic standpoint, I don't think we have even begun to understand what the damage is. And but when you're under the table cowering from an earthquake, you're not worried about the pictures that fell off the wall or the china that's getting broken. You're just trying to keep everybody safe. So until the government, I think, provides a bit more clarity about when the economy is even open for business, particularly to this audience, the live events audience, we've never had that in our 100-year history of when the government stopped us from doing business. So even if we wanted to do business, the government's not allowing. I just read this morning, Ontario says don't plan any live events at least through July, but other states are sending different mixed signals. We're keeping a tally of live events that are being canceled or postponed, and there's a lot of things that have been pushed to August or October, so there seems to be optimism that once we get through the summer now, maybe. So anyway, the first point would be, I think it's a little premature to even start talking about recovery because we're still in the thick of it right now. The second thing I'd say from those 40 roundtables is I went into that roundtable with a very CNN mindset of doom and gloom. And 8 of the 40 business owners were having their best business year on record. And it was surprising to be reminded that there are a lot of people that are benefiting from this. Zoom, the provider of this conference call, is now valued more than the entire North American airline industry. So there are tools, there are businesses, retail, pharmacy, grocery. We had a pet food company on the thing saying, this is actually Christmas for us right now because everybody is pantry loaded. They do anticipate a bit of a demise later because people don't need 4 50-pound bags of dog food. They don't still need to keep buying it. But I think we would do well to remember that for a lot of businesses, alcohol brands, telecommunications, social media shops, medical device companies, supply chain, they're doing very, very well right now. So when the question is how are large brands reacting, it's too blunt of a question. It's which categories, which industries are actually thriving and which ones are dead in the water.
Yeah. And so Kelly, same question from a event professional business standpoint, clients you're working with, are you seeing or have you supported and strategized on shifts and pivots? Can you share like what some of those the companies in our industry are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think to go back a step, as a marketing geek, I have been fascinated by watching some of the larger brands and how they're adapting during this time, and that's beginning to trickle down to our industry, to these mid-size, smaller mom and pop companies. There are three areas that I've been watching. You have the large brands that are repurposing, they're pivoting. They're your McDonald's that now you can't pick up, but they're delivering, or IHOP, International House of Pancakes is delivering. So those ads have really been interesting to watch how their agencies are pivoting on a dime to come up with those new ads overnight, and what that looks like. So that's the first one, are the companies that are pivoting. Secondly, I would say there's the companies that are repurposing their content. If you watch a lot of the car commercials, you'll notice that they've gone back to old campaigns where it's all about family and safety and evergreen messaging. And the same, I think that can trickle down to our industry as well. And then the last one, which is, I think, my favorite, is the most positive, the most optimistic for me to watch, is the "You See a Future with Us" campaigns. And we're seeing that in the hotels and travel, with our conference centers and our event centers. And I think that's really important to be portraying that when business may have stopped now, but there's a future with us. This is how that future looks like with us. So those are as far as big brands, like those kind of seem to be the umbrellas that I'm seeing. We're seeing those trickle down into our clients. We have our clients range from event venues to caterers to linen companies to production companies and entertainment companies. So they're really, all of them are very different. But some of them do fall in pockets of pivoting, like the caterers. Everybody's pivoting to pick up, to take and bake orders. So, in a 2-week span, they've had to redo all of their marketing collateral, all of their menus. They've had to figure out what can they get, what stock, what provisions can they get to even make that menu. So that's how we're seeing them pivot. Venues, we've had a few of our venues, the first week they pivoted to government grants and how they could help with emergency capabilities, providing space. That was the first week. Then the second week, when the stimulus bill was passed, the SBA grants opened up. And so now we're seeing where they need support in helping with the language for those SBA grants, so that they can be training centers or training facilities. So there's a lot of pivoting going on, and we're not at the peak of it yet. So I think that some of these companies are still going to go through, more and more changes. But then you also have, on the other end of that, you have your planners and your linen companies, and there's not much room for them to pivot. So they really have to find creative ways to not be opportunistic, but to stay relevant and heard, and so they're not forgotten, So there's a lot of, it's a lot of different tentacles that, any which way they could go.
Yeah, for sure. Dustin, anything in the either Q&A or chat just before we keep going?
Nope, there's some good ideas batting around the chat, but no specific questions for the panel just yet. Keep going.
Throw anything out, or should we just keep moving?
Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay, so again, with grains of salt, and thank you for your opening remarks, Chris, to keep us sort of in a realistic zone here. Is there a right or wrong in terms of how to manage your brand in something like this? I agree and believe it is the truth to say that there is no roadmap for this, for what we're going through right now. But is there a right or a wrong? And Kelly, you use the word opportunistic, which is on my notes here. I'm curious your perspective on opportunistic marketing as versus simply being business people that need to keep business moving. So I'm not sure who might want to comment on that, but we're curious your perspective on, is there a right or a wrong approach in terms of marketing, putting messaging out into the world for the purposes of driving business in a time like this?
Yeah, I'll actually add in there, because kind of my focus area of where we're seeing the pivot on is on what I kind of call the content strategy around all of this. So, a lot of different businesses might already have different media buys in place or marketing collateral out there. But what is changing is that that tone and that conversation is kind of a little bit of what kind of Kelly was talking about, but there is kind of this new level of compassion and empathy in how people are delivering their message. And it's obviously important for us to stay positive in everything that's going on, but you know, I'm seeing a lot of brands and even how what we're working with clients is how can we reshape that conversation that we're having with our target audiences, and how we can really kind of there's this new sense of gratitude that's being communicated out there, and trying to create an emotional connection, you know, and also trying to move minds and hearts. And it's not a hard sell. There isn't any client that we're working with that it's a hard sell. It's empathizing in the situation that we're in, and that we're in this together, and we're going to get through this together. You know, those are really kind of the themes that we're kind of pivoting and adapting to. But, you know, we also have clients that are thriving that we're working with, and then others where the business has just stopped. So, but that message of empathy and compassion relates to both. And it's about nurturing relationships at this time. And that's something that I think everyone can kind of walk away with, regardless of where you're at in this crisis, is how you're interacting with your vendors, your suppliers, your clients, your colleagues, you know, how you're all kind of working together. And it is really kind of at the core of everything that we're working on.
I think I've heard the expression tone deaf more in the past 2 weeks than I've heard in the past 20 years.
Yeah.
I appreciate the sensitivity. When you say there's something that you could or couldn't do that's wrong, I think there's a lot you could do that's wrong, and that would fall into that bucket of being just tone deaf. I think the keg got baked over the coals a while ago by, you know, saying, why not come out tonight? Well, it's like, I'd love to, you bastard. I'm quarantined. And so, you know, I think that the idea of not adjusting your message or not acknowledging that times have changed. I would encourage, I remember being in the boardroom in 2009 when the previous housing market hit with Starbucks, and Starbucks CMO picks up his marketing 3-ring binder and dramatically whips it across the room, smashes into the wall, the pages all fly out. And he's like, not one thing about what we thought was going to happen now makes sense. So it's a do-over from scratch. And I appreciated the flair of, it's silly to think that not just, you know, from a sales perspective, but from a consumer sentiment perspective, from a what's even, you know, politically correct or sensitive, it all needs to be rethought.
Yeah.
Where I see brands making the mistake, though, is they're spending way too much time worrying about their communication strategy. What can we say? And I think, frankly, there's a lot of lip service and platitudes about we're in this together and we'll get through this. I don't need Richard Branson from Virgin emailing me saying we're going to get through this. I find it wasted calories. But what I do like is businesses that are worried more about what they do. So when Dyson starts making respirators, or Anheuser-Busch starts making, you know, hand sanitizer, then all of a sudden that's substantive. I do want to know about those things because you're actually helping the problem versus being a part of the noise. But I think the other thing that you could do wrong is I don't think you need to be that sensitive to, well, is now the time to send a commercial message? If it's a discretionary piece of crap that nobody needs in their life right now, then no, now's not the right time to send the message. But people are still looking for solutions. Computers still need to be bought, you know, clothes still need to be purchased, food still needs to be eaten, etc. So I think that you just have to decide what part of our business does still provide value. And in the live event space, you know, what still needs to happen is training and networking and promotional opportunities and sponsorship opportunities and learning. And so you just have to reimagine, well, what do you do if those needs exist, but we can't get together at a trade show? And I think the people that start solving those problems versus, you know, complaining about them, they're going to recover the fastest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. The noise factor right now is with everyone at home, and everyone is becoming a master content creator, or they think that they're a master content creator. The noise is really thick. So if if a client can't put out something relevant, then they just need to save their breath. They need to work on being relevant to have something to say instead of just contributing to the noise. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, so I'm just going to look at the list here. So let's assume that the majority of people on this call are a business inside of the special events industry from all different verticals and facets. What can those that are thinking about, that are brand leaders or that are thinking about their own businesses and their brands, what can we be doing while we quote unquote wait it out to prepare for when it's appropriate, or not to undo what you've said, but to prepare when we go maybe more full steam ahead with with marketing again? So let's assume some have dialed it back a lot. What can business owners and employees of those businesses and brand thinkers be doing while we quote unquote wait?
Yeah, I'll start with this here. And you know, what I always kind of look in my kind of marketing and branding world, I always kind of look at an inside out marketing and branding approach. And so, you know, and a lot of times companies don't have that opportunity to really kind of take the time to focus on some of their marketing communication touch points. And so if, depending on where you're at in the spectrum, whether you're working with an agency, whether you're doing it yourself, I mean, these are the times where you can really look at your website and, you know, updating copy and content on there, or, you know, building a new website or designing new marketing collateral and things that you might be able to do on your own, or, you know, if you are working with someone to partner in kind of creating that. You know, we've been seeing obviously social content blow up in so many different platforms, and you know, there's so many communication tools out there. There's so much noise. So it's kind of like looking at what is your, you know, take the time to look at your brand positioning and what's the value that you're bringing to the table. It's not saying to kind of pushing that selling out there unless it makes sense in this climate, but there's still opportunities. You can keep your marketing and sales team going. You know, there's still sales appointments that can be done. There's all your collateral, your marketing touch points you can look at. You could look at new communication tools, create maybe a blog, or even hosting webinars yourself to kind of position your company, your business, your service as, you know, subject matter experts out there. It's definitely time to kind of take this time to up your game and kind of double down on what is your content that you're putting out there, and definitely position yourself for success once you kind of get out of here. So it's, you know, that's an easy kind of tactic that anyone can kind of take on if you're doing it yourself or working with an agency or a firm.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Our list for our company, it's the same task list that we would have given a client pre-COVID. You know, the things that they need to work on, their websites, their messaging, their the back end blogs, so they're getting better SEO on the services that they do sell. And all of that stuff doesn't necessarily, like Alex said, doesn't have to be pushed out today, but it could be in the queue so that when it ramps back up, that you're ready to roll and you have fresh stuff on your website, and it's getting, you know, newly crawled with search finds.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll add to that they can do is, if they have been maintaining a blog or videos or podcast, to go back and see if there is any content that can be refreshed to be used in today's, that fits the topics today, because they may have some content already in the queue that just needs to be reworked a little bit to fill in the gap while they're creating new stuff or working on new stuff. So don't forget to repurpose. Don't forget to use what you have in the, you know, what you all have already done that can be easily be used.
Thank you. I have a sub question, but Chris, do you want to jump in? Do you want to reply to that, to the first format of the question?
Yeah, I agree with Alex and Kelly. If your ambition is to thrive after the event, after the crisis, I attended a webinar last week with 900 ad agency owners.
Oh, wow.
Hosted by a guy named David Baker that's been doing consulting to that group for 25 years. And he started his webinar with the most sobering, practical thought that I'd heard in a long time, which is, for many of you on this call, this is your wake-up call to hang it up and to shut it down. And that he's been coaching agencies who for years have been complaining about the changes of the industry, and they just don't have the stomach for it. And if you imagine that there's going to be a best case scenario of a 12-month, but maybe even a 24-month recovery, and you're 58 or 63, or you're already thinking about
You're
what's
over
next.
it, yeah.
Why even go? Why waste the calories trying to salvage it? You think about the most vulnerable people that are physically at risk with the corona. The same metaphor applies to businesses as well. A lot of us had pre-existing conditions that made us not a very healthy business. We'd already had extended our lines of credit. We had already didn't have proper differentiation. Maybe had poor labor management skills, and we're overly, had bad overhead to earnings ratios. So I'd say before you start thinking about how you're going to survive, do a real gut check. Do I love this industry? Do I love my company? Is this worth going through a couple of months or a couple of years of pain to emerge out the other side better? Or was this a chance to not just reimagine your company, but reimagine your career? And maybe this is the time to go do something different, because we're not all going to get through this unscathed. And you have to be honest about, are you one of the ones that are going to be better? Are you going to be the same? Or are you going to be worse? And then plan accordingly for that.
Yeah, thank you for that. You wrote a great LinkedIn article, and we'll share the link here as well about, forgive me for not remembering the exact title, but I know you wrote about enduring versus succumbing. And so we're going to come back to that question a little bit more, but thank you for those comments, because it is, there's perspective plays a big role in this, and to see it as an opportunity to, make shifts that perhaps were in the back of your mind already is a great perspective. Dustin, you've let me know that there's a question. Why don't we jump into that first, and then we'll keep going. You're on mute. Oh, there you go.
I got it. Yeah, there's a question here from Corey Fox. It's a bit of a long question, so I'm going to try and read the whole thing. A U.S. national news outlet today reported a poll forecasting large group gatherings and events are going to be very slow at coming back. People will be hesitant to gather. How do we as an industry help change that conversation once we know it's safe to gather again? There's a bit more, but I think that's the bulk of the question.
Great question.
And I think it's a great question. So what do we do as an industry to help make sure that we're not being that conversation is being led by us, those within the industry, and not by the media? Anybody want to take a stab at that one?
I think it's a great opportunity. If I was a member of an association like the ILEA, I would be looking to say, what are you doing from a lobbying perspective or from a content perspective that will help mitigate the natural human tendency to be wary of large crowds? So no one of our clients, no one of our events is going to be big enough to get the message out that we're open for business and that it's safe to return. But collectively, we could start to fight that tide and to help people realize that, nobody, without sounding insensitive to the danger, but so, we're not doctors, but once the medical community says groups of 50 or 100 or 200 are now available, I think as an association and as an industry, we need a voice that amplifies that. And as well as, tangible proof points, examples of people that kind of reemerge from the cave and, start to have human interaction again. We should be celebrating that opportunity to get out of our bunkers. And that's where I would want to pay into a co-op or be part of a group that had a much larger platform to get on the Today Show or to get on. Yeah. I was going to say Regis and Kathy Lee. That shows you how old school my
I used to love Regis and Kathy Lee.
Maybe find a newer I don't know who Kelly's partner is nowadays.
I think Chris, that leads to a really, really important point about who is going to take the charge for our industry and getting us back into the black. And I will say from the ILEA standpoint, we've never had so much communication with other fellow associations. There's never been so much collaboration and willingness for everybody to share information, to share data, to share education. And this coalition back to the top is going to come from the association partners. And as associations, we're going to have this really interesting time ahead of us where membership dues are going to come up, and people are going to have to make choices about where they invest their money. And not a plug for ILEA, but a plug for associations in general. There is going to be a really important seat at the table that we need to make sure that we're all still supporting our association organizations so that they can do this good work. Because this good work is not work that is going to finish tomorrow, next week, or a month from now. This is going to be an ongoing messaging campaign to make sure that our industry is being recognized and supported through this.
Yes. And I don't think that that's one association, like you said. I think that that's all of them, because there's so many different fractions to the industry that everyone needs they need a seat at that table to be part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you know, we're 2 weeks out from Global Meetings Industry Day, which is obviously there's a lot of content online, and there will be thousands and thousands and thousands of event profs around the world getting together virtually around a number of different conversations. You know, there's a bunch of groups owning their own conversation on that day. But it does give me thought, and from an ILEA perspective, and to all the members and non-members on the line, those who are interested in keeping an eye on that conversation when we do turn and have, you know, clearance from health professionals to gather again, really help all of us own this conversation together, and perhaps we start the crusade on Global Meetings Industry Day. So
exactly. And it's not just meetings, because it's also the weddings, and the weddings are they're the gate opener to these corporate events becoming more, I think people becoming more acceptable being around each other. You know what I mean? We all kind of lean on each other. So
yeah. Dustin, what you got in there?
I've got one more here that I want to get to. So Angela Mills, thanks for the question. As a small business event rental vendor in Nashville area, we do a lot of corporate and social events. Would it be good or insensitive to use social media to market and offer solutions to those social events, such as brides for weddings and for graduations? I'm just not sure about the timing when it is good to do this, which I'm sure is a huge question on a lot of people's minds as to when it's okay to start marketing again to those groups, or do we just continue doing it business as usual? Maybe Kelly, why don't you take the first crack at
Yeah, that question has, what day are we on? Today's Wednesday. Yeah, that question has begun to come up on calls this week. Our clients are saying, when can we start selling again? When can we get promotions out there? When can I get this special offer out there? And I'm like, you can't even wear social distancing. You can't be closer than 6 feet, 6 feet in a conference venue. So I don't think it's time to throw out a promotion yet. I really think that it's different for it's going to be different for every company. It's listening to who your buyer is, listening to where they are in the buying process. Personally, if I were giving a client a rental company that was wanting to market to brides, I personally would have them hold off just a little longer, probably till Easter, and see what Easter brings. The reason for that is you still have you had these March and April brides. They rescheduled to May and June. This week, there's been the upset of, oh crap, May and June, we're going to have to postpone those so they're not settled yet. So if you really listen to that buyer market, those brides aren't even settled yet on where people are going to land. For weddings, my gut is to give that at least a couple more weeks to see where that lands. And in that time doesn't mean that you can't be doing messaging, but follow up with the clients that you do have and find out, what are they reading? What are they watching? What are they listening to? So that you can tap into creating content or offering content that's still relevant to what they're wanting without selling them. I mean, it really is the time to perfect, like, selling without selling when you're creating this content, because some of it just comes off as, I think, insensitive. Like this week I saw a collective of bridal vendors come out with an email, and they gave promotions for everyone that was in that collective. Like, there was a promotion for all of them. They were from photographers to linen companies, decor companies. But the language that they used in it was something to the effect of, book your vendors now, pay your deposits, pay the deposit now so that you can guarantee this company is around when you get to your wedding date.
Interesting.
That's just terrible. Yeah. So I think that you have to, everybody's client base is different. I think that you just really have to listen to your buyers and see what phase of this that they're in.
And I would even add, the timeline of this is so tricky, because like demographically, we're going to see cities and states open up at different times, based on what we're talking about today is the peak of the crisis. And, it seems like every state has a different model of when that's going to be. So that obviously contributes to the psychological part of all of this too. That's going to affect that confidence of when people are going to feel comfortable to come out to meetings and events or participate in community happenings. But so it's like, listening is probably such a key takeaway now more than ever, to really kind of understand, what your customers feel and what they want. So kind of dovetailing a little bit on what Kelly was saying, that listening is critical, but being realistic about what your levels of service can even be, because you might be promising something that you can't even deliver.
Yes.
It's just, there just isn't a silver bullet answer here on all of this, because I think the timelines are going to be different for everyone around the world. So we just need to be realistic about that.
Yeah, I'll add two last thoughts to that. My old boss used to have this great quote about never trying to reason with irrationality. And what she meant was, don't try to make logical arguments to crazy people. But what it means in this particular instance is we're going to face something over the next 30 days that is going to be overwhelmed with irrationality. When you start talking about 1,000 or 2,000 deaths a day, people are going to lose their minds. Politicians are going to lose their minds. You figure the most vulnerable in this whole thing are the elderly, which is also the most powerful lobbying in the world. No politician wants to be seen as not doing enough in an election year for old people. Right. So we're going to see a lot of overcorrection. And the truth is that the death toll we're facing in April was largely due to the spread that happened in March. And in many ways, getting the economy back on its heels, we have to get over that hump. And this is the hump month. So I certainly would imagine pencils down for the next 30 days, because nobody's having rational, logical thought. We're glued to the news. People we know are going to get sick, and people we know are going to die. And so we should just kind of write off another month for all practical purposes. Then when we get on the other side of that, mid-April, mid-May to early June, then your challenge is discipline yourself enough to use your clients' timelines, not your own. Like Kelly's email is such a great example of the opposite of that advice. Your business is not anybody's problem but your own. So nobody's going to change their behavior to keep you around. And I don't care how good of a photographer you think you are, or how great your chairs you think you have. You're going to find equipment, and you're going to find photographer, because there's more supply than demand, even without the virus. So I definitely think you have to discipline yourself. Another quote that I'll leave with you is, nothing reeks more, or there's few things that humans find more repulsive than desperation. So you cannot appear as desperate as you may actually be, because now you're playing a pity card that actually is going to have more negative consequences for your brand. Your aunt might throw you a bone. Your old boss might do something with you to keep your business alive. But you should not have any sort of marketing communications that would even hint to the fact that you're not going to be able to be around to make your obligations or fulfill your contracts. You got to put on your prettiest dress and go out there when it's appropriate to say, when you're ready to have your next event, I'm ready to service you.
Right. And you can go back in time and show why you've stood the test of time, what your history is, and how long you've been in the business, and the things that you have weathered, and the work that you have done. I don't think that those are unsensitive things to be sharing in content. I don't think that because it's not selling. It really is just sharing your position in the industry, you know?
And a lot of people are going back to when we had the recession in 2008, 2009. A lot of people are going back to that as like, what did we learn from that period, and what can we take away from that and adapt to today's crisis? Granted, obviously it is different, but there definitely are some takeaways from that period that you can kind of implement here too.
Great. Dustin, I have 2 questions left that I'll put up, but only if there isn't anything in the Q&A for us to tackle, or the chat.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll see if we can tackle this one for Adele. What do you think about sporting events and recreational events? Any thoughts on the future of live sporting events? It's a tough one because it's a bit specific.
Yeah, you know, guys, listen, I remember vividly being in a hotel lobby 2 days after 9/11, where people were holding these handmade signs saying planes are down, cars are rented, who wants to share a U-Haul to get back home? And I had to get to Atlanta. And I thought to myself, is there anything worse than driving across the country with 3 strangers in a U-Haul truck? I'm just going to wait this one out. I don't believe that the airline industry is dead. I think it needs to take a beat to figure out what's in. 6 days later, I was on a plane right back, and I had a wonderful 6 days in San Francisco. Just thinking to myself, I'm so glad I didn't panic and get inside that U-Haul truck. But it reminds me of that scene with John Candy where they were home alone.
In Home Alone, yeah.
The banjos, right? That could have been my life. So absolutely, there's going to be live events again. I mean, there will be some fundamental changes to our behavior, but hopefully that means we wash our hands more, or a little bit more sensitive to coughing into our arms, right? The NCAA will happen, the NFL will come back, college sports will resume. Now, whether they happen this fall is going to be an interesting debate, depending on how much we can absorb here in the spring. But all the models that I'm seeing, if the primary benefit of flattening the curve was preventing an overrun on the hospitals, we're out of that woods by early June, right? So we should start to assume that there needs to be other practice. The other thing that they're going to do is they're going to start testing to see who's already been recovered. And they might go to a bracelet system or something like the movie Contagion, where it's like, hey, we're not even at risk. So let's let the kids play soccer. Let's let the brides have their weddings. Let's let the businesses have their trade shows. So I mean, if you think about, every day feels like a week and every week feels like a month right now. We're just kind of overreacting to, is this the new life? And if we look back, because I bet you July, August are going to start to feel more familiar than we imagine right now.
Our association consultant at ILEA that we've been working with on a call last week, she said it really well. She said that that when sports come back, that is going to be the indicator that we're open for business. And I think that that in a lot of ways that is going to be true. You know that these big sporting organizations are they're itching to get back to work, and they will likely be some of the first indicators that we can gather. And I think for our world, it's going to be great to see them come back, because that's where the confidence is going to come from. So yeah,
they're such unifiers. I mean, they're large unifier events. So yeah, I think that they will be big indicators that, okay, it's time to, let's get moving on the other things. Yeah, awesome. I agree.
Dustin, anything else in there?
I've just got one more here from Silver Cloud Trailer Events. And it's basically the same question. Will large marketing activations at festivals, South by Southwest, Coachella, be an option for 2021? Or will these very large gatherings be out for years? And I think the answer remains the same. I'd be curious, Chris, from a brand perspective, do you think this is going to change marketing activations within these large festivals and large gatherings? Do you see a decrease or an increase in the live on the ground activations?
Yeah, well, so the director of South by Southwest is on our advisory board for the gathering, and we do our own 1,000-person event in Banff every February. We fully anticipate we have permission to gather. We fully anticipate there'll be some pent up demand for people that want to gather that missed the opportunity this year. What we're more nervous about is the profit loss statements of the clients that would allow their people to attend. So, our event is a $1,500 ticket. I'm more worried about, come September, October, they say, I'd like to go, but our budgets have been slashed to only essential activities. So we might see a rise of what does a $199 ticket look like, or a $499 ticket, scale back some of the offerings so that more people can come simply because their companies need more time to recover economically versus that we're still in lockdown next spring.
Yeah, I think value marketing is going to be key once everything comes back online.
Yeah, I mean, it's all going to come back online. People are going to crave that in-face interaction. I think certainly the conversations that I've been having is, as we kind of look at that, I mean, we're still in the storm. So I think that's kind of the best scenario here. We're still in the storm. We're not through the eye yet. So we kind of have to let this play out a little bit. But I think you'll find that once we do get out of it, there will be that hybrid approach to all of this. All these live events are going to continue to happen. The activations are going to continue to happen. But we're also going to look at, with a parallel to that is, all right, what are those other communication channels that we can keep going that we've implemented now, some of these virtual opportunities? So that hybrid model, I think, is going to be kind of part of the discussion when you're planning events and meetings and brand activations, is kind of, all right, we're doing this in-face piece, and then how are we going to reach this other audience through maybe some other virtual opportunities too? I think that's the way some of the conversations have also been changed.
I have a final tactical question, Chris, if you wouldn't mind, and then I will open up one final, more general question for all three as we close out. Chris, do you have a perspective as of today on how much of marketing in, let's just say from like July, August onward, has to sound like COVID or talk about the impacts of COVID or be sort of laced with the narrative of COVID? Do you have any sort of sense on that?
I was doing a social distance hike this weekend, and I said, if it went away
It's hard
tomorrow,
to do.
if I was asking the couples that we were with, if this went away tomorrow, would the novelty of it have been an interesting, blip, and life as we know it immediately reverts back to normal? Or if it lasts a year, at what point do you say now we fundamentally changed as a society? And I think I was surprised when most of them said, if this was done by Easter, that they would have said, what a wild inconvenience, but now let's get back to what we knew before. So the fundamentalness of, is this fundamentally shifted, I think is probably too new, and some of it will be different by obviously industry. I do think that most industries, let me put it this way, we were in a 10-year economic boom, which hid a variety of sins. Most stores had too many stores. Most restaurants had, had too many locations. Most people were spending well above. I think I read that the average American had $24,000 on their credit card. Like these were unsustainable practices to begin with. So I'd hope the wake-up call for brands would be, if COVID was a big part of your future, like Tesla's is now making respirators, not cars. If they want to ride that wave for a while and get the goodwill of, hey, remember how we had your back? I think you could look at the same businesses that thrived out of World War II. M&M's as an example, Coca-Cola as they fed our troops, they kept people smiling, they brought a little bit of joy to people's lives. Sure, milk that. Take advantage of the fact that you were part of the recovery. But I think a lot of other people, it's kind of irrelevant. It's like, we're glad that's over, but let's, we're looking forward, not backwards. So let's just get on with our, if I'm Levi's, I'm just excited to get back to school sales going. I don't have to remind people that COVID sucked, right? They know that it sucked.
Yep.
I know. I always think of Dawn dish detergent. Remember, with all of the ad campaign about helping clean up the oil spill and cleaning up the animals, getting the oil off of the birds and whatever. That was they rode that for a while, and then all of us, they eventually had to move on. We're back to like scrubbing dishes. Like that's what we were, manufactured for.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with Chris. Onward and upward, like as soon as it is allowed. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So we've got just a couple minutes left. Alex, I'll throw to you first. Final words of optimism for our event profs on the line, waiting this thing out.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it with a couple of tips here. So we kind of talked about adapting and pivoting, but I'm gonna kind of recap a little bit on reminding people to listen, and I'm gonna definitely kind of put a plug in there to be engaged with your associations, whatever association that may be. Obviously, I'm partial to ILEA, but this is a time to learn. This is a time for us to kind of stick together because we'll get through this together and definitely succeed. Definitely want to tell people to be compassionate in how you deliver your marketing messages out there, and also just kind of say support local. Check in with your vendors, with your small businesses, everyone that you work with, clients. Just check in with them. Just kind of do that health and wellness check. That's really going to go a long way in kind of nurturing those relationships. It's, and that's all part of the marketing mix in all of this. It's not selling, but it's just kind of being a partner in all of it. So support local, be compassionate, listen, be engaged with your association, and we'll get through this together. We'll get through this ILEA strong.
Awesome. Kelly, final words of optimism for our peeps here?
Yeah, I'm going to follow Alex's lead with a couple tips. Engage. We have a caterer that 2 years ago went through a hurricane. They're a small coastal town, and we spent a lot of time during that catastrophe building their community and engaging with them. That community has now come back around and is keeping that business afloat. They have doubled, tripled every week that it doubles that community. So engage with your people, because if you're just even starting that today, the next time that you hit a hurdle, that army will be ready for you. So as far as marketing, engage with them. And then my other tip would be that for our industry companies that are smaller and mid-size, the business owners and the leaders in those companies, don't forget that what you are personally posting online also reflects back to your business. I know that people state that this has nothing to do with the business, but it does. So just be cognizant of the kind of messaging that you're putting out there personally, because it does reflect back. You want to keep positivity, and you want to show that our industry is strong and that it's going to rebound and that your company is going to be around. If you are continually posting doom and gloom, it's a reflection on your company. And it's just perception, online perception.
Thank you. Chris, final thoughts before we close it out?
I think that I don't be overly romantic about your business or about the situation. This is still Darwinian or Darwinian. What's the word? Darwinism. It will be last man standing. This is a game of survival of the fittest. If you have a well-run company, if you are an ambitious leader, you will emerge from this with dozens of fewer competitors than you had before. So there is a bright side at this when it's all said and done. It's just a matter of what's it going to take for the cream to rise to the top there. Not a 6-week blip, maybe a 3 to 6 month blip. You'll start to see things. And so brace yourself to win the war and worry a little bit less about the battle this month or next.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm sensing Dustin and Corrine, let's add to the list maybe for 30 to 45 days from now to do this again. If our contributors would be so willing, or we mix it up a little bit, but I think I sense that some very great insights today about we don't know yet, and would be awesome to try this again with what we know to be true as of 30 to 45 days from now. So quick flip ahead, guys. Join us on Friday, 3 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Mountain, for our kickoff of our Clear Head Strong Mind series. So we wanted to just create an opportunity at the end of the week to let you go into your weekend having had a big exhale as a group and a community. We'll take you through some guided exercises, weekly challenges, and follow-up checks each week. So join us this Friday. The following week, Easter Friday or Good Friday is a holiday, so we'll host it on the Thursday, but then Friday's going forward. So check it out, ILEAHub.com. No need to pre-register. Please come join us. To any of our panelists and contributors, if you need a little relaxation before you go into your weekend, please join us. Reminder to check out ILEAHub.com under the COVID coronavirus resource page for a continuously updated set of resources, as well as webinar recordings. And if you are an ILEA member, log on to my community and share your thoughts on any topic that might be interesting to you or to others. Of course, we've got a Facebook group that's super active as well, so please join. And reminder, if you are a member, we would love to have you update your contact information. We would love to continue to be connected with you. And we know that there's a lot of change everyone's going through. So log on to ILEAHub.com and give us a quick update on how to find you. So guys, that's it. We did record this, so we'll post this up tomorrow if you want to go back and re-listen to certain segments. To our amazing contributors, Alex, Kelly, and Chris, thank you so much for your time. I know it's I would assume, I think, busy as always, just maybe a different kind of busy, but we're all in the comforts of our own home offices. So certainly a unique time, but we really appreciate the conversation and you sharing your brains with us. And to everyone on the line that joined in, thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Go wash your hands.
Exactly.
Great job, guys.